This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 228, recorded on August 20th, 2015. Here at Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the Average Guy.TV studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. Mike, we had some beautiful weather here in Omaha. It's almost like fall has come, right?
Yesterday was just about perfect. As perfect of a day as you could have.
I walked outside expecting summer, and it's for at least temporarily, summer is gone here in Nebraska. And
I ate outside. I was like, this is great.
Super nice. Of course, we post this show with world-class show notes each week out at theaverageguy.tv. If you have questions, comments, or contributions, you can contact the show. Send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Track me down on Twitter, just at @jcollison, and now call in those questions, and you can even call them in during the show. I'll monitor it tonight if you want to call them in and leave us a voicemail, 402-478-8450, and we'll play that right here on the show. Mike and I did that last week. We had 4 calls, and it was awesome. So give us a call during the show. We'd love to take it. Of course, theaverageguy.tv is powered by Maple Grove Partners Web Hosting. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people you know and trust. That's just Christian. You know Christian. He's doing that. He's got space for you out there. Plans start at $10. MapleGrovePartners.com. Home Gadget Geeks is a part of the Geeks Network. Find the link to this show and many other great podcasts out at thegeeksnetwork.com. You can join us in chat, watch or listen live on YouTube, on Spreaker, on Mixler. Find all the navigation, everything you need. There's no way you shouldn't be listening to this program, by the way. We make every single available way for you to do it out at theaverageguy.tv. All right, we have an interview. I want to get into it. Let's quick introduce Mike Weger. Mike, welcome back to Home Gadget Geeks.
Fantastic to be back.
And if you haven't checked out Suit and Scrubs yet from Mike and Hannah getting together, talking about their 6 months being married and all the things they fight over, it's pretty awesome, Mike. I'm not going to lie.
It's a lot of fun.
You guys are doing a great job.
We talked about, though, there's going to be one time where one of us is in the doghouse after we record because we just went too far telling the audience things. But, yeah, no, it's a great time. 298network.com is where all of my stuff is. You can head over there.
All right. Well, we got a special guest tonight. It's a podcast we've had lined up for a long time, and this actually had homework. So hopefully, if you haven't done the homework, head out to the show post for this. It'll be theaverageguy.tv/HGG228, just the show number. And I'll have the link to John's book. But Sir John Hargrave, John, thanks for coming on, and we're excited about kind of going through your book.
I'm so excited to be here, but I'm a little nervous because I didn't do the homework. Was I supposed to?
Well, you wrote the book, so
okay.
I think we are good.
Is that maybe the teacher? Is that it? Am I giving the exam?
You're going to, yes.
Finally.
Everybody take out a piece of paper, 1 to 10, and the quiz will be given by you. John, let's start with this concept of sir. Not everybody gets to be a sir, and obviously there's got to be a story behind that. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got that title.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I wrote the Queen of England a few years ago, and I said, Your Majesty, I would like to be knighted, because I just thought Sir John Hargrave sounded so much classier. Don't you,
Yeah,
Jim?
this sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it looked good on a monogram, on a pajamas. So the Queen wrote me back. She said, I'm sorry, you have to do something noble or honorable. And I was like, well, that's a lot of work. So I called up my local county courthouse, and I found out you can go down, pay a small fee, you go before a judge, you can have your name legally changed. And so here I am today, Sir John Hargrave, kind of a name hack, if you will.
I like it. Well, it's effective. It got me to ask you the question on the show, and so tell us a little bit about where you're from, some background, some of those kinds of things.
Yeah, so I reside in Boston. I'm the CEO of Media Shower, the content marketing company, and I'm the author of this new book, Mind Hacking, which is all about reprogramming your brain to achieve the impossible. I'm excited to talk about that tonight with you and your listeners.
Yeah, no, very interesting book. You sent it to me, I don't know, about 8 weeks ago. I began reading it. I think one of the things I was most impressed with is it was just really easy and interesting to read. One of the styles you brought in is a very kind of a tech-heavy example. You're talking about mind hacking, so that's kind of easy, and your background's in technology, but I appreciate you bringing in a lot of technology examples in what we're doing. did you have to do a lot of research to get those, or is that stuff pretty much just top of mind for you?
Oh, so much research. Yeah, a ton of research. And I mean, it really is a book for geeks, by geeks. I consider myself a great lover of technology. And the research really was on two fronts. One was finding good stories, and really it's an ode to all my favorite technology heroes like, Steve Jobs and Woz and Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison, all these great legendary historic geeks. But the other part was all the research. So there's all this neuropsych research that we wanted in the book to make sure that it has all the grounding of science behind it. So between the two, there was a lot of research.
Yeah, and so there's a genesis to the book. What was, as you think about, what made you sit down and think about this, and what was the genesis concept that really got you going on this book?
Yeah, so I tell the story in the first opening chapter, but I was visited by the U.S. Secret Service at my home. And I won't get into the story. I won't spoil the surprise. But let's just say that when the Secret Service shows up on your doorstep, it's probably a good sign that things aren't going so well in your life, right? Yeah. So I realized that alcohol and drugs were at the core of this this problem that led the Secret Service to my home. And that night, I made a decision to throw away everything, throw away all the alcohol and drugs I had in my house. Most difficult thing I've ever done. And in the process of doing that, I found the most difficult thing was my mind. And any of us who tried to make a change in our lives, change a habit, get healthier, exercise more, start a business, spend money more responsibly, stop procrastinating, we all know that our mind is one of the fundamental obstacles to overcome. And so I found if I was able to just concentrate on the muscle movement of throwing these bottles into the dumpster, not like putting my mind on hold and focusing on literally one step at a time, I was able to get through that. And that was my first mind hack, like a technique to control my mind. And over the coming years, as I got and stayed sober, I really worked to develop a library of these ideas, again, grounded by science. And it's that collection of hacks for your mind to change your behavior, to change your mental programming that we list in the book.
One of the things that I started practicing as I was reading through the book, and you talk a little bit about concentration or kind of listening to what's going on inside your head as it's happening, right? Kind of capturing those thoughts, that programming is what you say. And just taking those steps, and like working out is hard for everybody, right? And I love to work out, but there are days when I just don't want to. And so I took some steps following what we talked about. It's just not thinking about the workout itself, but grabbing my bag and walking out of my office, right? That was like the first, like, okay, I'm gonna grab my gym bag, walk out of the office, get in the fitness center, change. That's the next step. And then not think about the total workout, but kind of one step at a time. Can you talk a little bit about that process as you think through of just getting started on something?
That's such a beautiful example. I love that. And an even easier step, if that's too much work, is when you get up in the morning, you put on your workout clothes. That's it. There's a great book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and he talks about how to create positive habits. And he says you need a cue and you need a reward. So the cue is the thing that happens to remind you to sort of kick off the habit, and the reward is the thing that you do after the habit. And you do those two things consistently. So just getting up in the morning and putting on your sneakers or your workout clothes serves as your cue. It just reminds you throughout the day. You're more likely to exercise if you just have it on. And then if you reinforce it with a reward, and that can be something very simple and easy to implement consistently, like a smoothie or coffee or a shower or going to sleep, whatever it is, doing that consistently, but withholding it when you don't do your habit. I guess you can't really withhold sleep from yourself, but you get the idea. The cue and the reward kind of bookend that habit and really make it stick.
Yeah, one of the things I started doing is purchasing like chocolate, really tasty chocolate protein bars that I actually staged at my desk.
Yeah,
right at work. So we have a fitness center at work, and so it's easy for me to go downstairs and work out, and that was the reward, right? It's like, okay, and I just have a box It's easy to buy on Amazon. In fact, I made it really easy to buy them, right, through the one-click type thing. So when I would run out, it would be easy to order more so that I would never run out of those carrots, right? That was one of those kinds of things. So when I'm done, I always have a look forward to, okay, at least when I get back to my office, I've got this reward. Is that what you're talking about when you talk about
Brilliant. Reward? Yeah, I'm going to have to use that one. And that's great. And then you don't get the energy bars, the tasty chocolate treats when you don't exercise. That's the other thing, is you can't give yourself the reward if you don't do it, but you are always consistent with giving it to yourself when you do. And it's really powerful. So much of what mind hacking is about is just new habits of thought, like providing ourselves with good mental habits that lead to physical actions, like the things you're talking about, like working out more frequently. But it all starts in our mind. Our mind is like the operating system for our life. So when we can reprogram or hack our mind, the rest of our life, our physical life, will follow.
This had me thinking I'm a law student going into my final year of law school, and I was
Congrats.
reading. Oh, well, I'm not done yet, but thank you. I was thinking, over the lunch hour, just like Jim was talking about working out, a lot of times I would go out to my car and listen to podcasts because that's what I love to do.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, maybe if I use this whole technique and just walk to the library instead and just sit there, maybe if I just sit there, I might, open up a book and get extra reading done, extra studying done. And the whole "you are not your mind" thing was just a very different way that I had never really thought about just looking at the actions I take every day. So it got me thinking, and I like that way of just the one step at a time. It was intriguing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And this concept of "you are not your mind" is really fundamental. That's the first thing we talk about in the book. So you have to learn to develop this awareness of your mind. And the analogy that I like to use is a movie theater. So I'm like a movie geek, and when I go into the movie, at the beginning of the movie, maybe you're like this, you're analyzing the movie, and you're thinking about like the cinematography and the music and all that. And but then if it's a good movie, you get lost in it, right? Like that's the purpose of a movie, is to get lost in it. Forget your boring life for a little while. And so our minds are like that movie where we get so lost in our minds that when our minds start telling us stuff, we just kind of go along with it, and we forget that we're like it's kind of a mental movie. Another analogy we can use is like being in super user mode. So like, as we all know, you've got kind of your user access in an operating system, and then you've got admin access or super user access. And the admin access has all these like superpowers that a normal user doesn't get. And that's what we want, is like to be able to get to sort of that admin level role of our own mind, so we can step back for a second and say, wait a minute, here's what's going on in my mind. Like a programmer looks at code and say, all right, I don't like the way this is running. I can see there's bugs here, and then reprogramming that to make it better.
And those are the stories. That is why. So I got through section 1. I just got to the end of the analyzing section. But those are the stories that the way you wrote the book, it was such a fun, not an easy read because it was intriguing, but almost like it was just it grabbed you, and like you were in it. Like the whole NASA story at the beginning of the analyzing section. What kind of sparked you to write it in that way, with those stories and those explanations, instead of just more of a scientific, here's the facts sort of book?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that feedback, Mike. That's really kind. And my theory is that if you're writing something that is kind of a self-help book, what I didn't want is like most self-help books have like flowers or like galloping horses on the cover. I did not want a silhouette of the Buddha. Did not want that. But I wanted something that like would appeal to somebody like me, like a very geeky, technical person, but also have good stories, like be fun to read and enjoyable. So I wanted it to be like a user manual for the mind, but I also wanted it to be a real pleasure to read at the same time, because we can get very sort of philosophical when we start talking about the mind. It can get very esoteric, and it can sort of lose grounding with like, well, what does this mean for me? And what I really wanted to do was say, here's how you can use these techniques that are actually proven by science. Here's how you can take this stuff and actually make it work in your life. And here's the exercises that you can take home and do and use it to reprogram your thinking.
Well, I'm a huge Apple fanboy, so you had me at Wozniak and the Apple One. So.
Yeah, there's some good.
Sucked them right in.
There's
sucked
some
me
good
right in.
Jobs and Was stories in there
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
John, you use an app in this. You kind of, it's a book. I mean, it's an ebook that you can download. It's actually available for free right now, right? I mean, I can put this link on my site in the show notes. It's still available for free. Folks can just download it and read it.
Yeah, that's right. So we're trying an interesting experiment with this. It's going to be published by Simon & Schuster in January 2016, available in bookstores everywhere, and you can pre-order your copy at Amazon now. It's a really beautiful book. But at the same time, we've made the digital version available for free in the spirit of open source software. So you can get that right now at mindhacky.ng.
And we'll throw that in the chat room when we do that. No, it's definitely a geek's book. I mean, I think my audience, when I started reading this, I thought, oh, my audience is going to love this. They are very geeky when they think about it. When we think about the loop, we're writing code and we think about the loop. What's the role? You kind of talk about concentration and addiction, and what's the role those kind of play in when we think about our brains and they're running through these loops? First, talk a little bit about the importance of concentration, and then can you bring addiction in there? Because I think a lot of us struggle with that.
Yeah. So concentration training is probably the most important discipline or habit to get into our lives. So we talked about the you are not your mind, the awareness, but then next is concentration training. We call it Jedi training in the book because I think there actually is a lot of similarities between the way we approach it and the way Luke Skywalker learns it in Star Wars. But basically there's an exercise, you may know it as meditation or mindfulness, but you spend 20 minutes in the morning, you spend the first few minutes focusing on the breath, and then the rest of the time focusing on your breathing at the nostrils and really trying to keep your mind focused, concentrated, just on your breathing. Now, we gamify it, so we say when your mind starts wandering and you notice your mind wandering, because that's the trick, when you notice it wandering, you give yourself a point. So we call them awareness points. And then you just redirect it back to the breath. And you keep track of your points. So you keep score, and then you keep a log or a journal, and there's an app that goes with the program. So basically you keep track of your scores from day to day. And by doing that, by gamifying it, we turn what, in traditional meditation is kind of like you feel badly when you notice that your mind is wandering, but here you get that little dopamine hit, so you get a little burst of pleasure that, oh, I noticed my mind is wandering, and now I can bring it back. That's the fundamental skill, because when we notice our mind wandering and bring it back, in that moment we're realizing, okay, I'm not my mind. Again, I'm the programmer of my mind. I'm the developer here. I'm not like in the program. I'm actually outside of it, and I can control it. And it's hard because I don't have much practice at it yet. But as I keep doing it, I learn and I get better and I get more skillful at that. That's what concentration training is all about.
And how is that? Certainly, because it's in an app, you guys have some telemetry on what folks are doing. I'm not talking about digging into their information, but how's that going? Are people using that? Are you seeing readers using that with success and keeping track? Because that was, for me, that was a little bit of a challenge. It's like, oh, I got to get my phone. I got to practice. Practicing concentration is hard. Are you seeing? Do you have any good success stories from folks writing in with you on that?
Yeah, so we're using this app called Coach.me, Coach.me, and I'm just a huge fan. So they've basically created a platform which you can use to improve yourself. And you basically join communities of people who are trying to accomplish the same goals, and it's everything from exercise more frequently to drink more water to, write a chapter of my novel a day. And so our whole platform is based on this app. And they give you a lot of data and insight into what the community is doing. And it's been really rewarding to watch the uptake from all of our mind hackers, this community that's growing bigger every day. But it's also really great because you can give each other shout-outs and you can, sort of high-five other members of the community. So you've got this built-in, group of people who are all trying to accomplish this goal of learning mind hacking together. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it was, for me, it's been a hard part. I need to revisit that. I got in, I got signed up. I need to revisit and kind of practice it again, because it was one of those things I got and then it was gone, and it's definitely not, I get as I read through the rest of the book, I got this feeling it's not really a one and done, right? This is a book really written, it's a manual kind of things to keep going with, right?
Yeah, so it's a 21-day program, which we have laid out at the end of the book, and the app walks you through that 21-day program. But at the same time, it is mastering our mind is a challenge that lasts a lifetime. It's a little bit like learning programming. Like, you can probably learn the fundamentals of a language in 21 days and gain proficiency with it and enough to start working on some serious projects. But to really become a master, it takes ongoing practice. But at least you have that structure to get you started and to keep you motivated to get through that initial learning curve, the most difficult part of learning anything new.
Did you, as you were working through the book, what kind of journey was this for you? I mean, did it affect you personally? Did you come out the backside different than you were coming in the front side before you started the book?
Yeah, totally. I really did. I mean, when you write a book like this, the best way to learn something is to teach it to someone else. And if you're writing a book about it, you have to go so deeply into it that, when you come out, you have a much broader understanding of this than when you started. So, yeah, absolutely. And I feel for me it was kind of, like finishing the last few chapters of the book. I read this great essay by Nikola Tesla, which was, I think it was called Harnessing the Human Energy Field. And it was this huge essay that he wrote for this monthly magazine toward the end of his life, and it was about all the things that he wanted to still do and invent to improve humanity. And it was so inspiring, and I really, I felt like there's another whole book just in that. So that's the kind of book kind of ends at this magnificent essay that he wrote and some of the concepts that he explored in there. But I think that's the next chapter for the next book.
No, good. You're already building in a sequel. Michael Ray asked out in chat, how well would this work with folks that have ADHD and focus problems, do you think?
Yeah, very well. Very well. So there's a lot in the book about ADHD and about training concentration. And I think that lack of focus is one of the great issues of our time, and especially for those of us who are geeks and live a digital lifestyle. We are inundated with distractions. So that's your Skype chat requests, your instant messages, your text messages, all the email lists that you're on, and so forth. And all the research shows that multitasking is a myth. Every task you add to your already overloaded cognitive processes means you do every one of those tasks worse. And so a lot of what we recommend in the book is consciously crafting a lifestyle to simplify those digital distractions. So in other words, turning off your Skype chat request and setting your messages to vibrate and unsubscribing from email lists. We call it the 1 hour investment, taking an hour to just shut down as many of those things as possible permanently. And all the research shows that when you do that, you're able to focus larger blocks of time on the things that really matter, on actually getting deep focus into specific tasks that you need to get done without this kind of constant bombardment of interruptions that cause that rapid task switching that certainly exacerbate your ADHD. Can I use that word, exacerbate? I don't want to offend anyone.
You're good. Yeah. No, we got a really busy weekend and week coming up. I'm preparing for a whole long week summit that we're having at work, and got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things coming in. And this week, it was funny, on our Facebook group, somebody was talking about the myth of multitasking, or that you could do it. And I had written in there, same thing you said, multitasking is a myth, right? Mm-hmm. And yet one of the days, I think it was just yesterday, I was just getting hammered with Facebook and Twitter. Social media is part of my job, and so it was coming in, and I was getting phone calls, and people were hitting me. And I had that moment where I had to stop for a second and just take a couple deep breaths and be like, I'm overrunning the CPU at this point. Physically, I'm taking it on. And there was some moments I kind of went back to the concentration exercises here to think, okay, for a second, let's just try and block some things out, take some deep breaths, and let's pull this thing back together. And you're right. the more you have coming in, the less you do. And I think a perfect example, I think we face all of that, all those problems going in. And so there's some great helps in there, I think, even in that first chapter of how to kind of overcome some of those and to come back to concentration, right? Because we just get inundated with everything that's out there. One more question on the book, because I really want people to go out and dig into it, and I don't want to give away all the good stuff. There's tons. We haven't even talked about the good questions of chapter 2 that are in there that I went through question by question. And it's funny, in the book you say, write it down, I'll wait. And I'm like, oh, I actually should get a pen and a piece of paper, and write things down.
It's hard, right? It's hard to go find a pen and paper and write things down.
Well, and I did. I got my book out and I started. But it was one of those encouraging things to me. I was like, oh, he actually wants me to, because sometimes you read books and you're just reading them to just get through them, right? And you're like, go right, I'll wait for you. And so that was a good encouragement to do that. One last question, though, I alluded to up front. When we think about addiction, you talked about that brain cycle of when you were trying to get rid of those bad habits and you were dumping things out. When we think about the programming of our mind, how does addiction play into that programming? I mean, what is that component that just keeps it going over and over and over and over again?
Yeah, it's a deep question. There's a lot of good stories about addiction in the book. And one of my favorite stories is about this book that was written about 100 years ago called The Common Sense of Drinking. And this was the book that predated Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step groups, and it was one of the first guys, Dr. William Peabody, who really tried to create a program to help alcoholics. And I read this book as I was getting sober. It was a big help to me. And one of the things he said was every morning, the recovering alcoholic should write down a list of everything that he or she is going to do that day, including rest. Like if you're going to take a nap, you write it down on your list. And then at the end of the day, you cross off everything on the list that you actually accomplished. So make a to-do list and then cross it off. Now, that seems kind of simple and obvious, but what it did was the alcoholics were in this negative loop. The negative loop was one of like, I feel terrible about myself, so I'm going to drink, and then I'm going to get drunk, and then I'm going to black out, I'm going to pass out, and then in the morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel terrible, and that's going to make me even feel more terrible about myself. So this is a negative loop constantly going on. And what he's doing is turning it into a positive loop. So it's like, okay, look at all these things that I wanted to do today, actually positive and constructive in some way, including taking the nap, and then I cross them off at the end of the day. So it turns it now into this positive, beneficial loop. Now he's also got all these other things going on. He's got a lot of the mind hacks that we talk about in the book, and so there's habits of positive thought going on. You're helping other people, so that's habits of positive action. So it's reinforced by a lot of these other things, but the basic concept is that you're trying to turn this negative spiral backwards and start to get it going in the positive direction and then gain momentum. So it's like a snowball or like a flywheel where you're getting more and more of that energy put back into your mind and into your life. And it works. It really works. That's what happened to me, and I mean that happens to countless addicts and alcoholics once they get sober.
Yeah, and Lopta says in chat, not just a loop, but a spiral. You mentioned that here just a second ago. There a little bit, but either a downward or an upward spiral on that.
That's right.
Jason, no. Let's see. Ray asked the question, so do you suggest scheduling email check phases at work? In other words, specific times to check email in the schedule so that you're focusing on one thing at a time? And I know you got a bunch of tips in the book to do that, but is that one of those things that you recommend?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I find it personally more helpful to schedule blocks of solid work. So in other words, schedule times of like, I'm going to accomplish this thing over this hour. I believe in this technique called 3-MIT, 3 most important things. I didn't invent it, but I find it useful. In the morning, you get in the morning, you write down the 3 most important things, the things that are really going to drive your business or your life forward, the ones that will really make the biggest difference. And then you do those 3 things first before you like check off all the busy work, like answering email and checking social media. And then you use your social media and your email and all that kind of easier work as a reward for getting one of the hard things done. So that's how it works better for me, is schedule the block of time, clearly define what that hard piece of work is, get it done without distractions, and then go in and allow yourself time to just answer emails or whatever.
Yeah, that's good. The book is free right now. I have the link in the chat room as well as on the show notes for this. You should be down. I mean, there's lots of great tips in there when we think about some of these things that we've been talking about here on the program. And so guys, dig deep into that. John, I want to talk a little bit about the writing process, and not from a how did you write it, but the technology that you used. A little bit, you alluded to this in the beginning, but I want to dive in deep. If I'm an aspiring author, I'm thinking about writing a book. Everybody, I think, has a book in them. Don't you think that everybody's got a book in them?
Yeah, at least one.
At least one book, and I think I even got one. But what did you use as you approach this from a technology standpoint? How did you go about actually writing the book using technology?
Well, we really wanted to make this fun for developers, and the geeks out there, your audience, you listening, you're who I wrote this book for, and really what I wanted to do was put this on a platform that kind of nodded to the open source movement and to just the development process in general. So let me tell you the normal publishing process first, and then I'll tell you what we did. So here's how it normally works. You get a book deal, you write your book, you send it in to your editor, who gives you some feedback. You send it out to like a dozen family and friends, and they all tell you it's great because they're your family and friends. And then you make some edits, and then it goes to press, and then it's released to the world. So what we did instead was made it on this platform called Gitbook, which is kind of built on the principles of Git and GitHub. So it's a giant platform that anybody can use that made it free, and then we released it under a Creative Commons license. And we opened it to the world. And I will never go back to the old way of doing it again, because what it let us do was have thousands of people come in and read the book and give us feedback and go through the program and tell us what worked and what didn't, just like software. So it really let us iterate and improve the whole process, but it also let me see what parts of the book were working or what weren't working. I rewrote the intro like 5 times, constantly kind of A/B testing it. And you never would be able to do that with the traditional process. So I think Gitbook and these collaborative types of writing platforms like Medium and like Amazon Write-On and things like that are the future of publishing. And the great part is you don't need a book deal. You can get started today.
Yeah, it really allows you to iterate in the process. I'll have to ask, is it available on EPUB?
Yeah, so the other thing that I just love about Gitbook, it's such a great platform, is super easy to use, like a great rich text editor, and then you can easily just publish it to a website, to EPUB, Mobi, all the electronic book formats, as well as PDF. So all that comes built in, and it's totally free. So it's just such a great platform.
So is it really free in the sense, like, so can anyone kind of step in, have an idea, start working on a book this way, and there's really no cost to getting started on the platform and submitting documents in there?
Yeah, currently totally free.
And how big is that community? From it takes a community of folks to get in, and so give some general numbers. When your book was reviewed, how many people do you think actually reviewed it?
You mean our community for the book, or the whole Gitbook?
Maybe both, if you know numbers for both. If you don't.
Yeah, I don't know Gitbook. I've spoken with the founders there, and they are just two really great guys, so passionate about like building this product and listening to customers. So I'm a big fan. Sammy and Aaron are the guys behind Gitbook. But for ours, I think we've had like 20,000 reads so far, something along those lines. And again, that is kind of beta testing before we release it has just made the book so much better than it would have been, if it was just my editor and my mom reading it.
Yeah, your family, friends. How did? Oh, go ahead, Mike. Oh, Mike, you're muted, man. Sorry, that's why we couldn't hear you.
My dog was barking in the
Oh,
background.
that's okay. There you go. Go ahead.
So when you release a book this way, I've kind of watched some people do book releases in the past, and there's a huge focus on, when it's on Amazon, trying to get as many sales in a certain time frame for, #1 bestseller or getting #1 in certain categories. Do you think doing this pre-release for free will help that, because you've already got this audience that wants to support you and help, and they want that book? Or like, is that not even a worry anymore? Are you not focused on those stats?
Well, we would like the book to sell well, and it needs to sell well in order for traditional publishers to be interested in taking my next book. So that's always, a big concern. However, I have seen what you mentioned, which is authors trying to kind of game the Amazon algorithm to try to like hit the bestseller list in the first 48 hours. And I don't think that works very well. And I also don't think it's very good for building an audience or for helping people. So part of what we want to do is get this out to as many people as possible, right? And the author Cory Doctorow has also made a lot of his books free or available under Creative Commons licenses, in addition to being published. And he had this great quote where he said, I'm more interested in getting the maximum number of people under the tent more than I am interested in making sure everybody under the tent has paid for a ticket. So in other words, like, you want to expand the audience, and what I want to do is share this with as many people as possible. In the as part of that, we have to sell books, but also I'm fine with giving it away for free, because I do believe in the end that good karma will come back. People will hear about it on your show, they'll love it, they'll go tell family and friends, they'll buy a copy for, they'll put it on their wish list, and they'll order a pre-release, and that will drive Amazon book sales as well.
I agree. I really liked it. Was a different way. You're the first person I've heard of that's kind of done it this way. So I kind of like it. And I like the idea of the good karma thing, because I think that's so true. You helping people, and the tent analogy is perfect. I'm going to use that in the future. I like it.
Yeah, it's all this is an experiment. Nobody knows, but I got to give credit to my publishers, Simon & Schuster. They've been so open to exploring these new models. I mean, we all know that publishing is undergoing huge changes, and we do have to find models that work better, not just for us as readers, but also for the companies that that publish books, because it does take a lot of time and energy and money to put out a good quality product, which they've definitely done here.
John, did you use the method where you released a chapter at a time and let people read those and give you feedback, or was it all at once?
I think it was in sections, if I recall. Okay. So in sections, but pretty quickly staged after each other, because I wanted to make sure I had kind of coherent sections before I put it up. But things like Amazon Write-On and those kind of models they encourage you to do more a chapter at a time. Yeah.
And when did you start putting stuff out there? It's going to release here in 2016. When was it first available?
I want to say a year ago, but you could go check the Git version history.
Okay, so it's been out. It's been out quite a while. From a available to the public standpoint.
Yeah, but again, I mean, the first draft was very rough, and so it's been continually modified and refined over time.
As an author, how easy is it to get that feedback and not be defensive? I mean, we know on Facebook when someone types in all caps, or the trolls, say things about that. As an author, how easy was that to get that feedback?
I'll tell you a funny story. So we've done a lot of this pre-release publicity, and one of the first things we did was went out to Goodreads, the big reader community, and we found people who we thought might be interested, like they liked similar books, and we asked them if they'd preview a copy of the book for free. And the first review we got on Goodreads was outstanding. It was 5 stars. It was great. I was so happy. And the second one was 2 stars, and it just said, "Not for me." 2 stars. Who gives a book 2 stars? Like Mein Kampf. I don't think I would give that 2 stars. I mean, there was still literary merit to it. Anyway, the whole thing was like, really, 2 stars. I don't think, though, as an author, that you can get too hung up on any one review, despite me ranting about that one. So you try to take things as a whole, and that was what also was useful about the Git model was, just like developing software, one user complaining about a bug, you can take it or leave it, but if you hear a lot of users saying the same thing, then you're like, okay, that's an issue that needs addressing. And so we tried to apply that software model to the book.
Yeah. No, very cool. Ken had asked in chat, thoughts on an audio version. We're an audio podcast, and a lot of our guys listen to all their stuff via audio. Have you worked through an audio part yet, or will Simon Schuster take care of that for you?
I think Simon Schuster will take care of that, but yeah, I appreciate hearing the demand for that, because I'm very excited about doing the audio version, and I hope that comes to pass.
John, I'm not going to lie, you could kill it with a podcast over this book.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, you absolutely could. A regular community built around the book where you come out. I mean, the Freakonomics guys did this and have been
that's a great podcast.
Yeah, been very, very successful. I think there's so much good material in here, written so well and constructed so well. Just as I read through it, for me, it was just really simple to follow where you were going. The things made sense. You didn't talk too long on the pieces. It wasn't all about you. It was about us reading the book. And I just think, as you've started in the open source community, I really think you could do a podcast. Have you done any regular podcasting in your background at all?
Well, I've done an awful lot of podcasts to promote the book, even though it's not out yet.
I bet you have.
It's been this year-long promotion effort.
Are you sick of talking to us at this point? Does it get a little?
Not at all. No, this is a great
good.
one. No, you guys are good. You're good. It's going good.
Good.
But I've really enjoyed doing those because it's very different from doing TV and radio, where you come in and you have 3 minutes and you've got to be very soundbitey, and the hosts are always trying to be funny and clever at the same time. But the beauty of podcasts is it's this just very organic communication medium where you can have these longer form conversations and get more deeply into ideas and do things like take questions from your audience. So I think it's terrific, and I'd be open to doing a podcast. I think it'd be cool to do the concentration exercises on a regular basis as a podcast, like with celebrity guests. That would be fun.
Yeah, have you heard about that 25-minute in the zone model for developers? For software developers, where they concentrate for 25 minutes at a time, write code, and then you take a break. 10-minute break, do something different, and there's even music that's developed. Have you heard of that concept at all? Because I think that plays in nicely with your concentration. In other words, doing work like email, 25 minutes, set the clock, boom, go like crazy for 25 minutes, get in the zone, and then get out type thing. Have you heard of that technique?
I have not. I'll check that out. But it is very similar to what we're talking about. It's like you set aside a block of time to dive deep and to get into that flow. And we talk about that concept of flow. And we all know what flow feels like. It's when things are just going effortlessly and you lose yourself in the work. And programmers or developers know it really well. I think probably better than anyone, because when you're like 8 levels deep in your code, you are in that zone. You're in... You're in the flow, and if somebody like taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, you want to go out for lunch?" You're like, the whole like house of cards just falls down, right? And it's going to take you 20 minutes to get back into it. So that's what we want to achieve, is that state, that zone.
Mike, any last thoughts as we kind of bring this in for landing?
Well, where I thought you were going with what he should be doing, I would love to hear him read the audiobook. Like, I think a lot of times there's some authors that I don't think it would be a good idea for them to do the audiobook. I'm like, you're a writer, that's kind of what you should stick to. But hearing you on this show has just been like, I would love to hear because the way the book is written, especially just the way that it flows, is so you and so unique that I think you would be the best person to read that book. So if they give you the opportunity, man, that would be amazing, because I am the guy. I have an Audible subscription, and just being in school and stuff, I don't read books at all for fun. I listen to them. So my wife and I will grab a book, and we travel all the time, and we listen to audiobooks. That's all we do. I would love to hear you read it. That'd be fun.
Thanks, but I'd like to read it in a very high falsetto. Would that be okay with you, Mike? The whole book?
Certainly.
Like this?
The whole book, yeah.
Chapter 1!
As long as it's because you're sir, so it'd be in a British accent.
Yeah, the old English lady. Just
British falsetto!
That's
Welcome
good,
to mind hacking! I'm Sir John Hargrave.
That's good. Nicely, you thought this through.
You practiced that, yeah. No
you
kidding.
thought it through. I like it.
Disturbing.
Well, I would. I'd really encourage you. I think 2 podcasts a month where you bring in, talk about elements of the book, and then bring in your audience who have great examples of, like my workout example. Just using that in. That would be a great interview for you to do. Bring in and support the book. And just put a podcast around the book. I'm, with podcasting, I'm like a kid with a hammer. Everything looks like a nail, and so I think everybody should have a podcast. But John, thanks for taking the time. Did we miss anything in here you wanted to highlight that I didn't ask the question around?
You guys did a great job, and I just want to tell everybody out there listening, these guys, they put so much work into this podcast, and you get it for free, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to put these together, so you should tell a few people about this, you should rate them, you should subscribe, you should like it, you should share it with some friends, you should tattoo the URL on your forehead, if you like it that much.
I'm going to totally take that bit and clamor it. Have you heard of clamor? Are you familiar with the 18-second clips all they do is play these clamors over and over again? But John, thanks for saying that. I almost never asked for those, but Mike and I were just joking about that earlier off in the pre-show about the likes and all that other stuff. But thanks for coming on. Can we follow up with you? Like, would it be good to follow up in the spring after the book has come out and just kind of catch up and see how things are going and that kind of stuff? Would that be okay?
I'd love to chat with you guys after the book drops. That would be a lot of fun. This has been great.
Good. Well, hey, I appreciate it. Mike and I, thanks for coming on. Again, I'll put the link to the book in the show notes. You can pre-order it on Amazon right now, right? If you'd like to do that, I can go out there and pull that up and pre-order it. I think worth having on your shelf. I liked it. I read it on my iPhone, so I downloaded what's the version I need for the iPhone? I don't even know. Weger, what is it, EPUB or what did I download to make it?
I just do the PDFs. That's what makes it easy for me.
There you go.
Or I just do it in the web browser. Actually, that's the way I did it.
Tons of different ways to do it. It worked on my iPhone. You can go to PDF. All those different versions are available for you. And so no excuse. John, thanks for coming on. We'll let you drop, and thanks for staying up late for us and doing the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yep, thanks a ton. All right. Very good stuff.
We off?
No, you go ahead and hang up. You're good. You hang up. You stood really still like you were.
Yeah, I thought it froze.
Like you were gone.
I froze.
Hit the hang up button in the upper right hand corner. Mike and I are going to stay on.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Great having you, man. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Mike Weger, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, your video went away.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was weird.
Is it back?
Nope, it's just you.
Oh.
It's just your picture. Oh, there you are. Now you're back.
Okay, good.
That's weird. Like on the live video, you're there, but on my video, you're not. That's strange.
Am I here? Am I not? I don't know.
It doesn't matter. I'll encourage you guys again. A very interesting book, and I'm not I don't recommend books. I don't think I've ever recommended a book ever on this podcast. I'm not sure I've ever done it, but this is one of those, especially because it's free right now. I really think you should get out there. Very, very, and especially for geeks, I think it's just very well written. I think you're going to like it. It's got some great descriptions. But most of all, it's got some really good habits. And us tech guys don't have the best habits, right, Mike?
No, yeah, definitely.
Got some. This is really weird.
I'm excited to get into the second. I want to get to that second section. I got through that first part of analyzing, and it was already just like boom. Like I was completely honest with the whole Woz thing. Like he had me at those sort of stories, the NASA story, just all of that sort of stuff. Which I found it intriguing. He talks about the whole. When you're immersed in a movie and you're just immersed in it. And then I was finding myself with like all of his stories. I was so immersed in it. I was just like in the story that he was telling, the NASA example and stuff. No. But and it was so different than anything else I've ever read. Now, to be fair, I don't read for fun because I don't have time, but it's just different than anything I've ever seen. So that's why I liked it, was just how of a different angle he took than anyone else.
Yeah, I think if you're a geek, you're going to like the book. So get out there. Again, this is one of those, they contacted me and were like, hey, we're, publicity. And I get a few of those a week from folks wanting to, jump on the podcast. And I was like, well, let me read the book. I actually didn't say yes until I had read the whole first chapter. And once I read it, I'm like, oh, we got to talk about this. This is one of those. It was written so well. I knew my audience would like the writing style of it. I knew they would enjoy getting into it. The examples are good. So, again, we'll post this. I'll post the link to it in the show notes. It's out there in the chat room twice, and so we'll post it in the show notes as well. Head over, grab it. It won't be out there forever. Well, maybe it will be. But the book's coming out. I'm going to buy the book for sure. This is a book to have on your shelf. Yeah. Yeah, this is a book that you get and you put on yourself. So, John, thanks for coming on. I appreciate that. Hopefully he's listening to the whole show. Some of those guys don't, but, John, if you were listening to this part, thanks for coming on.
All my nerd friends, you can just know what you're getting for Christmas 2016. That's what you're getting. Sorry.
Yeah, well,
no, not sorry, because it's going to be awesome. But it
is going to be awesome. I think it's one of those books. When I used to give young couples like you, when they got married, my gift was Larry Burkett's Complete Financial Guide for Young Couples, right? One of the best books that I ever got for brand new married couples that to work together. There's some things to work through to work together on getting your finances set up when you're first married. That's super hard. I mean, you guys are talking about what you're fighting about. I'm surprised you haven't talked about money yet. Somehow
well, we took Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace before we got married in prep, so we were right up that alley. So
good.
That's been one of the better aspects.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear.
Well, I think, like for young couples, I think this is going to be my go-to book that I recommend when people are struggling in their career or they're struggling just with finding a career, or because there's some really good exercises. It was really funny. I was going through some of the exercises that in there, and one of the questions he asked is kind of about significance, like, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? And so, of course, I want people's lives to be changed positively because of the work I do, right? That's one of the things that's ultimately at the end of the day, I hope people say he changed people's lives in a positive way from that. And I've been, and in there I wrote down, I've been thinking about writing a book. And so I was doing a call to coach just the other night, and the coach just pegged me, and he's like, so when are we writing that book? I hadn't said anything. And he's like, when are you going to write that book? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you've got a book in you, and it's this. And he started like schooling me, and we got done, and I think I'm gonna write a book. So, yeah,
I'm all for it. Was that Andy that called you out on that?
No. This
really?
is nobody in our community. This is the crazy thing. This was one of our Australian coaches, and I won't talk too much about it. I'm gonna. It was interesting that John came on and we talked about this because I've had some questions. I want to write it in an open source format where I can submit the chapters out to you guys, to the listeners. It's perfect. I got 1,500 listeners who will give me some feedback, right? And so I'm going to get started on that piece. Oscar, who encouraged me to do it, he's like, I want 30 minutes from you twice a week. That's all I want. 30 minutes twice a week. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, you're going to dictate it in, and we're going to start from there. And I thought, okay, that's doable. It'll take me a year to get through it, but it's one of those.
I think you're going to get into it, and you're going to love it, and you'll have it knocked out so quick.
I think so.
Hey, knowing the guys in the chat room, you have the most critical audience, brutally honest audience you could ask for. So I think it's great. All these guys are awesome. So.
Yeah. No. So it's interesting that kind of how your life kind of comes full circle. One of the things I've really been working on, especially with the podcast, is not taking any one project and trying to do it all at once, but breaking it down into little tiny components that can be done over time. And then it's not like, I've got to do all these edits all at once, or I got to do all this stuff, but little tiny bits, and then pretty soon you're done. And I've even gotten to the point where, it's about a 4-hour job for me to produce my podcast. You know the deal. You know how this is, right? So I've been breaking that down kind of into 45-minute chunks so I do this, and then I walk away. So Friday night I do maybe the first hour of edits, and then I get them uploaded and I go to bed. And then on Saturday I pick that up and I might write the blog post, and that's an hour. Get that done. Then when I get that done, I post it and I walk away. And I come back and I might upload everything to the various places that needs to go, just to kind of break that down into a more manageable kind of than sitting at my desk for 4 hours, cranking stuff out.
Which that's hard to learn to do. It's very hard to learn to break things up, I think. I have always been a procrastinator, so naturally that makes you do everything in one sitting. You knock it out. My whole term was I'm just going to sit down and knock it out. I mean, that's just what I used to do. But you're so right. It works so much better when you can, divide those things up. And I've had to learn that the hard way. That's the way I'm programmed to work. I thought I was a natural just knock it out guy, but I'm not. That doesn't work out best
No,
for me.
I'm not either. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna focus on this 25-minute in the zone idea, where I'm gonna sit down and free myself of distractions and work on one thing for that 25-minute period
I like that.
because I'm totally distracted with Facebook, and because it's part of my job.
Right.
And I feel like, if somebody posts something on Facebook, I got to answer it right now, as opposed to, it can probably wait 20 minutes, before I get back to it. And so that's one of those exercises. Out of the book, the thing I'm the worst at is that concentration. And man, I need to practice those concentration exercises for sure. So pretty cool. Well, we want to remind you, if you haven't caught Suit and Scrubs yet, that's Mike's podcast going on. I am really enjoying it, Mike. I think it's like nothing like we have in the network.
No.
It's not tech-based. It's you and Hannah talking about life.
Well, thanks. I
dig
appreciate it. It's honestly just one of the most fun podcasts we do, and the reason I like promoting it is because I honestly think a lot of people will just get a laugh out of it.
Yeah.
And that's what we are trying to do. Is just like, if you just want 30 minutes out of your every 2 weeks, that's all we can give you. But 30 minutes every 2 weeks, just to sit back and just have a laugh at our expense, go for it. That's what we want you to do. Is just laugh at our stories. So yeah, that's what we like to do. Suit and Scrubs, 2980network.com/Suit and Scrubs. So it was open mic night. But yeah, thank you. I love it.
I like it. I'm digging it. I'm excited to watch you guys grow into it. I get a chance to kind of talk with you a little bit about it each Thursday as we get together. You put it out early in the week. It seems like it's every other week.
Yep. Every other
and so I get, as soon as it comes out, I start listening to it. And 30 minutes or so it's not a huge commitment. And so I was just listening to that today, and I was just like, man, Hannah's getting really good. So excited to see her grow, excited to see you grow through that, and well worth watching. Michael Ray had asked when the audio version is going to come out of that book for mind hacking, and that, Michael, he said Simon & Schuster is going to control that piece, so probably next year sometime it's going to come out. We'll wait for that. I hope he does a podcast. That would be pretty cool.
Oh, me too.
If he would do that. And well, we have officially fired up Home Tech Tips again. So if you are a listener here and you subscribe to Home Tech Tips and then you dropped it, because I dropped it, I just let it go for about 5 months. I've been really trying to work on a vision for what Home Tech Tips would be, and I think I've got it. And I think I have a scalable way of doing it. And so that's what I'm trying. And so I'm not going to say any more than that. I want you to go back, if you had it in your subscription and it just expired inside your podcatcher, resubscribe to it. It's going to be really cool. We've queued up 2. By the time you're listening to this, there'll probably be 3 or 4 new ones out there. We're doing some work out of Mike's podcast, Open Mic Night, as well. I've been stealing some stuff from him, and very, very short, nothing more than 10 minutes, and you can just no intro, no nothing. We just jump right in. It's 6 minutes. It's what I get busted for on YouTube all the time, which is for talking too long, So it's just straight to the point. Mike, you got a chance to listen to a couple, that I just put out. What'd you think?
I love just how short and concise they are. I actually watched them on YouTube. That's where I've noticed it, because you are so right. You nailed it. I had unsubscribed, or I didn't unsubscribe, but Apple stops getting it when you don't listen to it for a while. So I hadn't actually gone through the act of unsubscribing, but they weren't coming in. Saw it on YouTube. It's the perfect length of time, and it's my favorite parts of what we talk about in a concise form. So
yeah,
obviously I'm a long form guy. I love listening to the full podcast. I want behind the scenes, I want pre-show, post-show, all of it. But I recognize that we are in the minority there. So I love what you're doing. I thought it was perfect. I even messaged you, or I was tweeting about it. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
You
kept tweeting. It was awesome. Yeah. Home Tech Tips is a completely separate feed. So go to theaverageguy.tv/subscribe. All the links are there to do the video, audio. 2 different kinds, video large, video small, and audio is all available for it. We are going to do, every once in a while, that's only going to come out on audio. I've got some things that I'm working on with Silicon Prairie News that we're going to try. You might want to subscribe to it because we're trying a new format with the news as well, and I'm going to drop that in the Home Tech Tips feed to get your feedback on it. That's a small audience. I think that I dropped those 2, and they got 200 or 300 downloads, which is pretty good for screwing around for the last couple, months. And so, Home Tech Tips, theaverageguy.tv/subscribe will get you all the links to that. Resubscribe to it. give us some feedback. We're going to use it. We're going to kind of monkey around with a few things and see what comes up. But Mike, I think I'm on to something from this shortened version of what we're doing. So,
do you do a master network feed? I've always wondered that. I've never.
I have one. I have one, but it's ugly.
Okay, I didn't know if that was something that
you get a lot. You would get a lot of.
Well, I subscribe to it all anyway. That's why I was wondering. I'm like, wait. And now that I think about it,
true.
I
it gets really messy in the feed, though.
That's
so
true.
I wouldn't recommend it. But head out. Home Tech Tips. We've got some new ones coming out. You might want to participate. By the time you listen to this, in the recorded version, we'll be super close to the Home Server Show meetup, September 12th out in Indianapolis. The link will be in the show notes. If there's still time, we got about 33 guys lined up. I think we'll probably get up to 40 by the time we pull the trigger on it here on September 12th. And so we're at the Microsoft headquarters in Indianapolis this time. It's going to be dynamite. This might be the best meetup ever. I'm super excited about what we have coming. So, Mike, sorry you couldn't come. I'm flying anyways. So maybe next year.
Yeah. And no show next week, right?
Yes, no show because
live
I have no live show. Yeah, thank you for. Yeah, I am. What do I have next week? I got something going on. What did I say?
I didn't mind it. It's my first week back in school, so I'm like, wow, that's kind of convenient.
Does that work out well for you? Not to have the show?
It works out actually pretty nice.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think I have a recruiting event, or let's see, what do I got going on? Oh, no, we're doing 10 podcasts over a week next week at Gallup. So I'm on at 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. Sunday through Friday. And so I thought I can't do another podcast while I'm doing that. So we're going to take a week off. You won't notice it in the feed because I'm a week ahead. So we'll use one to get caught up.
Perfect.
And then in a couple weeks I'll be at the Heartland Developers Conference, and we'll be interviewing a bunch of developers and a bunch of tech guys. And those will show up in later weeks because I'll be off for recruiting here coming up. And you guys know September and October are the busiest months for me. So hard to sometimes make those. But we will always have a show in the feed, and so those will be available for you as well. I'm available Saturday mornings, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern, out at Ask the Podcast Coach /live with Dave Jackson, jamming Dave Jackson out there, and we that's always a fun one to listen to, and you can call in. Nobody called in tonight, I don't think. I got so caught up in the interview I didn't check. So if you called in, I apologize for that. We'll play that next week. And last but not least, if you're purchasing on Amazon, use the Amazon affiliate link, theaverageguy.tv/Amazon. And of course, those go into the Tech Scholarship Fund. Buy it. I'll buy it. I'll send it to you. You test it. You write it up, and we will get that out on the page. Speaking of that, we have a guest writer, and she has been writing for me now her second post. And so if you want to go out and to go to theaverageguy.tv and scroll down to the reviews, the news and reviews. Maria is out there. Maria Ramos has been writing for us. She approached me and said, hey, I'd just like to write for you. I said, great. She's looking for exposure, and I'm always looking for interesting content. And so in the reviews and how-to section, crowdfunding spreads the word about important solar projects. Solar's near and dear to me. I really like the whole concept of solar. I'd love to have my whole roof in solar here, southern-facing exposure, and I dream about a day of adding power back into the grid. That would be awesome. So if you're into solar, check that out as well. We're out here every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, at theaverageguy.tv/live. Mike, where do they find you?
2980network.com.
Now, some good stuff going on out there. We'll be back here. Did we say next week? Or is that one I'm off?
No.
I can't remember.
2 weeks from now.
So next week, no, it is next week. We're off next week, and then the week after that, Mike Howard's coming on to talk about his Hue lighting. So we're going to bring out all the Hue products. I've got some. You've got some. What are you looking at me funny?
I think that's the week I'm off.
Oh, no.
No, I don't have to be. I don't leave till Friday morning. I leave very early Friday morning.
The 3rd, September 3rd.
I leave like at 4 a.m. Friday morning.
Okay, good. So you're up for that. We want to talk about Hue lighting. Very cool. All right, with that, we'll say goodnight, everybody.